Ooh, I don't think so. I think China does the opposite of this.
It baffles me how people are always curious to know what's wrong about China, what's not going on, what's not right about your government, what's not happening, rather than focusing on the things that are really happening. It's interesting to see how people would just want to hear negativity, while even the little nice thing that this country is doing is barely known by a majority of people. Like, don't you think that it's the right time to replace the lies that you've believed with the truth? Or is it that this is what you really want to hear? You just want to hear that China is going backward, China is has bad leaders, China. Like what exactly do you want? Because you want to go a step further, but we are always going back and addressing these comments that are kind of regressive at this point. Now, when someone says, "Can you expose the Chinese government?" what do they want really to hear? What exposition do they want? Like, what, like, I want to understand.
And for the folks who don't understand history, yes, there was a time when food is scarce. It's called famine. Many countries have suffered through this. It's devastating. It's the reason why most of the technology involves around farming. This is why US is so good at genetic modified food, which really dominated and still dominates the industry since the 50s and 60s. Anyways, now you know.
You can't believe that 30 years ago, many Chinese people live in a house like this way. But nowadays, we totally changed it, and the house we are living now are much better.
Xi Jinping is a very uninteresting person, but precisely because he's uninteresting, he can be the leader of China's political system. So you have to be a very interesting people to be elected in the West, say United States. You have a very interesting president, to say the least. So the only thing that I can remember Xi Jinping did that kind of interesting is in the 80s or 90s, he visited a small town in Iowa when he was about the mayor level of a small city. So anyway, that small town still keep a lot of trace of his visit. Other than that, I can't remember any. After that, I think his position moved upward towards the province level, and he happened to be in the Fujian province. So he was the head of the Fujian province for maybe 5-10 years when I was in Fujian. Okay, so, but again, I didn't know any interesting thing he did. So one thing I heard is that because in Fujian we speak dialect, and outsiders just don't understand. There's no way for Xi Jinping to understand Fujian dialect. So in all his years in Fujian, he's kind of like fish out of water, because the local official, when after meetings over, will speak to each other with dialect that he wouldn't understand. So that's the only interesting I know when he was in Fujian. And at that time, in China, there's actually another very interesting figure whose name is, I haven't think about his name for so long that anyway, so he's more ambitious. He's kind of at the same background as Xi Jinping. So in the Chinese political system, somebody who's more ambitious, who's more interesting, has a harder way to be selected as the next level of leader. So anyway, so Xi Jinping was elected precisely because he's not that interesting, and So every level, when he was, say, the mayor level, all the rest of all his leader will vote, right? And people will think, oh, this guy, he's not that interesting. He's not going to be a threat to the system. So he will get more vote. So level after levels, eventually he's the leader of China political system. So anyway, you may not like the system, but for China, keep harmony is a huge concern. So in every level, the person who put harmony in priority will be more likely to be elected. So Xi Jinping is the head of state, and also he has to be very uninteresting.
Tell me 10 bad things that the Chinese government does.
I can't really name 10 bad things the Chinese government has done, because most of what you heard are lies fabricated by the West. If you are talking about things the public generally believes the Chinese government has done wrong, then that's the example of its panic response to US and Western sanctions, which lead to its failure to prevent the Great Famine. Another example is its overly pessimistic assessment of the revolutionary situation, which led to the erroneous launch the Cultural Revolution. Here I can add one more thing, one I personally experienced, a policy that caused widespread public resentment. 两少一宽, 2 views and 1 leniency. This was a policy implemented in 1984, which aimed to minimize the number of arrests and lenient sentences for ethnic minority criminals. When ethnic minorities committed minor offenses such as extortion, assault, or theft, reporting them to the police often proved futile, and they went unpunished. This led to rampant crime among Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities, while the majority of the population suffered greatly. Why was such a change policy implemented? The reason is that the West has been supporting Zionist separatists among ethnic minorities. If strict enforcement were enforced against them, the West could easily use it as a pretext of human rights violations, even triggering sanctions against China. In the early stage of economic development, we could only swallow our anger. This also led to a period of very sharp ethnic tensions in China. As China's national strength gradually increased, it no longer needed to bow down and endure Western oppression. This policy was officially abolished by the Xi Jinping government in 2014. As you have seen, since then, the enraged West has begun to vehemently accuse China of infringing upon the interests of ethnic minorities. In reality, it is precisely because of the abolition of this reverse discrimination policy that the majority ethnic group and ethnic minorities have once again become brothers and sisters. This is certainly something the West does not want to see.
I'm not saying China has the best system. There's a lot of things that Chinese political system can be improved. But the basic logic that's working now is whoever have control of the government has to work for the people. That is their survival requirement. If they don't, they will be overthrown. That's China's philosophy in 5,000 years or 3,000 years. That is whoever were able to manage the people, whether it's emperor, whether it's CPC, their survival depends on how they can align their policy with majority of people. I don't know how to put it another way. So as long as you see Chinese political system surviving, it is because it aligns with the interest of most people. Otherwise, it gets overthrown. I can only speak for myself as a Chinese person. I don't hate CCP. I don't love CCP. I love or hate something that CCP does. Okay? In my scenario, I love the fact that I was born in
one of the poorest region in China, one of the poorest family, but without any special treatment. I was able to go to public school all the way to college, getting into the best college in China without any background. That I have to love. I love whatever policy that make that possible. And when I graduated from college in China, I applied passport, CCP gave to me, and I went abroad. I love that. I didn't need to do anything. I'm free. Get educated. Go wherever you want to go. I love that. And with all the policy that I understand, some policy I love, some policy I hate, okay? I love the fact that in China, abortion is legal. I love the fact that in China, gun control is very strict. I love the fact in China that infrastructure building is a priority. I love that in China, health care is a priority. I love that in China, that homelessness problem is pretty much solved. What are the things I hate? Things I love in abroad, things that I hate have a lot to do with the international policy. Okay, for example, I hate that CCP is, the voice is so weak internationally. For example, internationally, all you hear is free Tibet. CCP need to be counter that energy with, for example, free Hawaii. Why shouldn't? If Tibet need to be freed, why not Hawaii? If the voice internationally filled with free Tibet, CCP has a responsibility to balance that with voice like free Hawaii.
Not only can you not speak out against the Chinese government, they have zero freedom of speech, ha ha ha. You're ignorant.
This is yet another public security civilian camera. Chinese government, I hate you. I'm against you. Zero freedom of speech, huh?
People just can't have enough negative news about China or negative aspect about China because you guys already got enough. One of the reasons I don't talk about many negative side about China is because I know you already got enough. And for me to waste my time to add to that part, it's not doing anybody good. And for me to add a little bit positive side of about China will do everybody a lot of good because that's truth. There's positive side about China too, and I am giving you that. And you should thank me. If you really want to know what I hate about China, the policy off top of my head, there's very imbalance in like it's between city and countryside, okay, the policy. Throughout the history, it's always put cities in the preference. So, for example, if you grow up in the countryside, a lot of resources are portioned. For example, education resources are portioned. So, if you are in Shanghai, your chances to go to the top university are 5 times more or even 10 times better than somebody grow in the countryside. Okay, if you are in big city, so big city and the countryside, there's some imbalance. That's a policy I hate, right? I hope, but it takes time to change. Maybe now it's not like that. I grew up in China. When I grew up in China, it was like that. So hopefully it changed. There's a lot of things I hate about China's policy, but you don't want me to talk about those. You already feel those day and night. You want me to give you a little bit true positive side.